You check your bank account. Your stomach tightens. The number is smaller than you wanted it to be. You assume this feeling is the enemy. You assume the goal of your entire life is to make that number bigger and bigger again until the tightening finally stops. But here's the strange part. Decades of research on money and the human mind suggest that once your basic needs are covered, more money does almost nothing for how happy you feel day to day. And in some very specific ways, having less of it might be doing something for you that having more never could. That sounds impossible. How could less be more? Let's go back to 2010. Two researchers, the psychologist Daniel Kahneman and the economist Angus Deaton, pulled together survey data from hundreds of thousands of Americans. They wanted to know exactly where the line was. At what income does more money stop making you feel better on an ordinary Tuesday? They found it. Around $75,000 a year. Your brain doesn't register wealth. It registers relief from threat. That's the part almost nobody tells you. Money below a certain threshold removes danger. It pays the rent. It keeps the lights on. It quiets a very old, very primal alarm system in your skull that has been screaming about scarcity since before your species had language. But once that alarm goes quiet, extra money has nothing left to soothe. You're just adding fuel to an engine that's already idling. So what happens instead? Where does all that extra money go psychologically? This is where a second body of research gets interesting and a little uncomfortable. The psychologist Tim Kaiser spent years studying what he called materialistic value orientation, essentially, how much a person's sense of self-worth gets tied to acquiring things. Kaiser's studies, published across dozens of papers through the 1990s and 2000s, found something consistent. The more centrally a person organized their life around wealth, status, and image, the lower their reported well-being tended to be. Not correlated by accident. Correlated again and again, across different countries, different age groups, different economic systems. Wanting more didn't just fail to make people happier. It actively made some of them worse off. Why would that be true? Here's the mechanism. Psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky, who has spent her career studying what actually predicts long-term happiness, describes a process called hedonic adaptation. You get the raise. You feel great for about 6 weeks. Then your brain quietly resets your baseline expectation, and the new salary becomes the new normal. You're not happier than before. You're just used to more, and now you need even more than that to feel the original spike again. It's a treadmill. You can run as fast as you want, and the horizon never gets closer. Now here's where it gets genuinely counterintuitive. If wealth resets your baseline and keeps you chasing a horizon that never arrives, what does having less actually protect you from? Sociologist Robert Putnam spent decades studying something he called social capital, the web of relationships, trust, and mutual obligation that holds communities together. And one of his most consistent findings, laid out across his research through the 1990s and into the 2000s, is that tight-knit social bonds tend to be strongest in communities where people need each other, where you borrow a ladder from your neighbor instead of buying your own, where you watch someone's kids because next week they'll watch yours. Wealth, paradoxically, tends to erode that. When you can simply pay for everything yourself, you stop needing anyone. And when you stop needing anyone, the ties that used to bind a neighborhood quietly dissolve. Poverty forces interdependence, and interdependence, it turns out, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term well-being that psychology has ever measured. There's a study you should know about here, run by the psychologists Elizabeth Dunn and Michael Norton. They gave people money, small amounts, and told half of them to spend it on themselves and half to spend it on someone else. The people who spent it on others reported measurably higher happiness by the end of the day, every single time, regardless of income level. Generosity, not accumulation, was the lever that moved the needle. And who gives away a larger share of what they have, statistically? Study after study on charitable giving finds that lower-income households tend to donate a higher percentage of their income than wealthy households do. Not despite having less, almost because of it. When you've known scarcity yourself, you recognize it in someone else, and something in you responds. Think about your own life for a second. When did you feel most connected to another person? Was it when everything was easy, or was it in a moment when you both had less than you needed and had to lean on each other to get through it? That leaning is not a weakness. It's the exact mechanism that built human cooperation in the first place. For most of our history as a species, resources were scarce for everyone. Survival depended entirely on sharing meat, sharing shelter, sharing risk, because the group that shared was the group that made it through the winter. Abundance is new. Scarcity is ancient. and your nervous system still runs on ancient code. None of this means hardship is comfortable, or that poverty should be romanticized, or that struggling to pay a bill feels good in the moment. It doesn't. Real deprivation is real suffering, and no researcher cited here would tell you otherwise. But there's a difference between deprivation and simply having less than you want. Gratitude for what you do have, closeness with the people you depend on, a baseline that never gets high enough to make you numb to the good things arriving in your life. The person with less has more chances, every single day, to feel that quiet relief of a need being met. The person with more has already adapted past the point where meeting a need registers as anything at all. So the next time you check your bank account and your stomach tightens, notice what happens after. Notice the small relief when the bill gets paid anyway. Notice the neighbor who helps, the friend who covers you this week because you covered them last month. That tightening you feel isn't only a warning. It's also the last thing keeping you close enough to the people around you to actually need them. And needing people, it turns out, might be the richest thing you'll ever have. There's a physiological piece to this too, one that most people never connect to their bank balance. The stress that comes from not having enough is real, and it changes your body. But the stress that comes from managing wealth changes it as well, just quietly, in ways that don't show up as an obvious crisis. Researchers studying high net worth individuals have found something unexpected. Constant vigilance over investments, constant comparison to peers with even more, constant fear of losing status. All of it keeps a low simmer of cortisol running in the background, day after day. It's not the sharp spike of a missed rent payment. It's a slower burn. And a slower burn, sustained for years, wears on a body just as much as a crisis does, if not more. Meanwhile, the person who has learned to live with less has often, without realizing it, built a different kind of nervous system. A system that has already survived scarcity and knows it can survive it again. Psychologists call this earned resilience. You cannot fake it. You cannot buy it. It only comes from having faced a real shortage and made it through to the other side. Think about the last time something actually broke in your life, financially. A car repair you couldn't quite afford. A month where the numbers didn't add up. You found a way. Somehow, you always find a way. And every time you find a way, your brain quietly files that away as proof. Proof that you are capable. Proof that a shortage is survivable. That proof becomes a kind of internal wealth that no amount of money in a savings account can replicate, because money in a savings account has never actually been tested. Compare that to a person who has never had to find a way, who has never had to ask a neighbor for help, or stretch a paycheck, or go without something they wanted. When the test finally comes, and eventually it comes for everyone, they face it without ever having built the muscle for it. There's an old idea in psychology called the immunization effect, and it shows up in physical health as much as financial health. Small, survivable doses of a stressor build resistance to the larger version of that same stressor down the road. A little scarcity, faced and overcome, immunizes you against the fear of scarcity. Constant abundance never gives you the chance to build that immunity at all. Consider, too, what abundance does to your sense of time. When you have enough money to buy your way out of almost any inconvenience, waiting starts to feel unbearable. A slow line at the store, a delayed flight, a meal that takes 40 minutes to arrive. Small frictions that used to be background noise start to feel like personal insults, because your wealth has trained you to expect friction to simply disappear the moment you don't want it. But when you've lived with less, you've also lived with more patience by necessity. You've waited for a paycheck. You've waited for a sale. You've waited for the right moment to buy something instead of buying it the second you wanted it. And that waiting, uncomfortable as it is in the moment, builds a kind of psychological flexibility that researchers studying delayed gratification have linked, again and again, to better long-term outcomes. Not because scarcity is pleasant, because the discipline it forces on you doesn't disappear once the scarcity does. So maybe the real question isn't whether having less money is good or bad. Maybe the real question is what having less money teaches your mind that having enough never has to. It teaches you what you can survive. It teaches you who shows up when it matters. It teaches you that a need, once met, is worth noticing, instead of something you stopped being able to feel a long time ago. And needing people, it turns out, might be the richest thing you'll ever have.